Waiting for the clock to tick over to 11:30 before we fall sitting here in silence. Morning and welcome to this meeting of the Cumberland Council Local Planning Panel, the 26th of September 2018. I declare the meeting open. I'd firstly like to do a welcome to country, acknowledge the traditional custodians on whose land we are now, past and present, and all other Aboriginal people who are here today. Please note that this meeting is being recorded, as is a requirement for the operation of all local panels. It's being recorded and webcast. Those people that want to can go back and have a look at today's proceedings if you're interested. Other than the recording that is officially taking place, no other person is authorised to record today's proceedings. And all make sure that your mobile phones are set to silence or switched off. We don't have any apologies for today's meeting. We have a full panel. Just introduce the panel. I'm Stuart McDonald, I am the chair of today's meeting. The other panel members today are, on my far left is Paul Moulds, who is a community representative. On my immediate left is Gabrielle Morrish, who is an expert member, and on my right is Marjorie Ferguson, who is an independent, also expert member. I'll just call for any declarations of interest. Nothing to declare, and I'll also advise those people in attendance here today that we all have or will be signing a formal declaration that there are no conflicts as well. Today we have two items that the panel will be considering. They are to do with, firstly, 18 Todd Street, Marylands West, and secondly, 327 Marylands Road, Marylands. We also have here today, and we have only one person registered to speak. I'll just provide anyone else here who is here and intends to speak the opportunity to register as well. We also have a number of council officers here today who are here to assist the panel, and the panel may be asking questions both of speakers and of council officers to assist in our consideration of these matters. The process today is that we will deal with each of those items in order, and those people registered to speak will have 5 minutes to speak. If they are objecting to the matter, and representatives of the applicant will have a combined total of 15 minutes to respond and to make presentations to the panel. After having heard from everybody and gone through any questions that we may have of any representatives or the council officers, we will then adjourn to consider our position in relation to both matters, and then we will return to announce our decisions in relation to both applications. First, in relation to the first item, 18 Todd Street, Marylands West, at the moment we have no one registered to speak. Are there people here who wish to address the panel? That's fine. Please come forward to the rostrum. Yep. Thank you.
The architect is also here, Mr. Chairman, but I'll be reasonably short, actually.
All right. If you could, because this matter is being recorded, if you could just give us your name and details, so it's on the record for the purpose of the meeting. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Alan Calladine. I'm a town planning consultant. I represent Mr. Charlie Weeby. He's the owner of the property. I'll be reasonably short. You've been to the site. You see that the site is quite isolated, or is isolated. You've been briefed by the council staff. You have the expert report in front of you. We agree with the recommendation of the report. The client accepts the conditions of consent. We're happy to answer any further questions your panel may have. I do not believe a presentation to you is warranted at this stage.
Thanks, Mr. Calladine. And I also thank you for mentioning the things that you did, because I failed to mention them. Firstly, that we have been to the site and we all have been furnished with and have read the reports, the council's assessment reports, including all of the recommended conditions, and we've also been briefed by council officers. So thank you for mentioning that. I should have mentioned all of those things. We understand that you're happy with the recommendation, and as I said, we've been briefed by the officers. We've been to the site. We have, without predetermining the matter, we've also, you won't be surprised to hear that we've discussed the matter, including some possible design, relatively minor design changes, but before we make any decision in relation to those, I think it'd be appropriate to canvass those with you, and you may want to consult with your client and the architect as well. Because we weren't expecting anyone to be here, and that's no reflection on
yeah,
you.
I apologise. I thought I had been made registered.
No,
that's all.
That's no problem. We'd probably given this a bit more thought than we would otherwise, because we weren't expecting you to be here. But nonetheless, these are some of the things that we have in mind, and panel members, please jump in at any stage to augment what I'm saying. We notice, firstly, to do with the treatment of the bedroom windows, we know that and understand why, I think we understand why you've included, or the architects included, obscure glazing up to a certain height on the bedroom windows because of the privacy and interface issues Um, at the moment, the panel's consideration would be that on the western elevation, because of the separation to the townhouses to the west, perhaps the obscure glazing is not necessary. And same for the eastern elevation, on the ground floor of the eastern elevation, the interface with the flats on the eastern side of the site. With the eastern elevation at first and second floor, we were wondering whether there might be an alternative design solution to the obscure glazing, possibly in the form of angled windows that would extend out from the facade, sometimes referred to as ear windows. You may be familiar with that term, that would be oriented towards the street, that would obviate the need for the obscure glazing, still allow an outlook, but still achieve the privacy that you're attempting to achieve for those bedroom windows. So that's the snapshot of the bedroom windows. Now, you may want to just take that on notice and consult with your client and the architect.
Yes.
I'll keep going with a few other changes. Well, perhaps you'd like to deal with that one first. That might be the easier one.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I've just been informed that there may be an issue in regards to fire separation.
Good, thank you. That's for the ear windows because they're in the 3 metres, yep, I assume.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. That's a good point. All right, well, we'll take that on board. It's probably not worth discussing that any further at this stage.
Mr. Chairman,
we'll consider that during the adjournment.
Yes.
The second design change that we're wondering whether might be possible is to do with the basement stairs on the eastern side of the site, where those stairs exit out within the front setback.
Yes.
Just wondering whether it might be possible to push those back and or reorient them to such that they could be located wholly behind and exiting behind that front setback, similar to the stairs on the western side.
Yes. The instructions.
Yeah, good, thank you.
Mr. Chairman. Design change is accepted, yeah. We can deal with that,
that's
yes.
Achievable?
Yes, achievable.
We're assuming you do need two stairs out of that basement.
Yes.
For BCA reasons?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. All right, we'll try and craft a condition around that. The next one is to do with the wire mesh above the basement along the eastern boundary. And we were of a mind, if possible, to replace that mesh with some sort of planter similar to what's proposed on the western side. Bearing in mind that we're wanting naturally ventilate, we understand naturally ventilate that basement, whether there'd be adequate ventilation
All right, I'll see instructions.
You're earning your money today,
Yeah.
Mr. Callahan.
I think that was just for noise.
Mr. Chairman, you're happy with the protrusion of the basement out of the ground. You're wanting more naturally ventilated, so the deletion of... I'm sorry.
So what we're trying to achieve is we're worried about the fact that the open mesh and the elevation of the basement together are going to create acoustic impacts that are really not reasonable on the
Yes.
adjoining property because they're very close.
Yes.
So given you've got a kind of almost shaped form in your mesh, we're wondering about whether you can tier landscape planters that effectively enclose the basement along that edge, not lower it, but
Yes.
enclose it. And that actually then gives a landscaping buffer and improves the amenity along that side of it. Because we notice you've already got openings to the rear boundary for the basement car park anyway,
Yes.
which will provide you with your natural ventilation, and that potentially you don't need all that open mesh area
Yes.
along the side boundary. So that can then become a landscaped interface between the two properties, which will help reduce the proximity issue.
Yes. Personally, I don't see a problem, but I'll get instructions.
Thanks.
Yes, acceptable. No problem.
Thank you. Moving on, the next possible design change was a fairly simple one. We think can be done within the maximum height control, and that was simply to increase your floor-to-floor heights to 3.1 from 3.
Yes.
It's doable, I think.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, yeah.
Yep, thank you. Next one was, again, a fairly straightforward matter to do with the painted render finish. Again, Ms. Morris can better explain this.
Just to reduce the long-term maintenance issues
Yes.
associated with painted rendered buildings,
Yes.
whether or not you can change the specification of that to a colour pigmented render, so you don't need to paint it ever.
It's more desirable, most definitely. I'll
Right.
the thumbs up, so it looks pretty good, yes.
Thank you.
Last one, you'll be relieved to hear this is the last one. We've left the most potentially problematic till last.
That's all right.
And that was a desire, if possible, to move the on-site detention from the rear up under the driveway at the front. And we had flagged this with council officers earlier. We appreciate that no one on this panel has the relevant expertise to know whether that's feasible.
Yes.
So we'd ask the council to canvass that with engineers. So just before you respond, we might just ask the council officers
Yes.
to get back to us on that in the first instance. Thank you, Mr. Rapon.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have checked with our development engineers and that certainly is feasible. I expect there would be some element of redesign required, but that probably not beyond the scope of what a conditional approval would be able to cover. So it is feasible and we've received some suggestions.
Thank you.
I'm just getting instructions, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman.
understand.
It's under the driveway, isn't it, you're talking about?
Yes. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, obviously we're not stormwater engineers
No, I
either.
appreciate that.
Council obviously have their experts looking at it. my instructions are that if it can be done, and obviously if we've had experts look at it already, we would accept a condition which addresses that issue.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that that's you're doing that on the run, and it's not possible to give a definitive answer to that. But as I said earlier, that was our reason for raising it at the earliest opportunity to get a level of expert advice to give us some comfort that it seems to be feasible. What I'd propose is that we will consider all of those matters, and in particular the point that you raised about the windows within the 3 metre side boundary setback. We'll consider all those matters, and yep, thank you. We would probably impose those as additional, bearing in mind it's a deferred commencement.
Yes, that's correct.
Consent anyway. So we'll put our mind to all those, including that engineering condition. But Ms. Morrish had a further query.
Just one question around the fire separation issue, or the treatment of the 3 metre boundary wall on the east. If the ear windows protruded into that 3 metre separation, I'm assuming the solution you'd have to offer would be drenching or some sort of fire shutter outcome?
Seek instructions. That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Callahan, and to Mr. Weeby and your architect for your cooperation and quick response to those matters.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
And assisting the panel. We'll further, as I said, we'll further consider all of those matters during our adjournment.
Okay.
And,
thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks very much. Was there anything, council officers, further you want to raise in relation to this matter? No, thank you. Thanks for your assistance as well. All right, we'll move on to item 2, which is 327 Marylands Road, Marylands. We have one registered speaker, which is Jonathan Wood, Town Planner on behalf of the applicant. Mr. Wood, thank you. Thank you. You are the only speaker on this matter?
Correct.
Yes.
Good. Yep. As far as I'm aware, there's no objectors or anything like that. So it's just myself. Mine will be relatively short also. Not going to go into huge amounts of detail, but just a few matters for the
Thank
panel
you for that. Now,
consider.
just before you get underway, I just reinforce what I said in relation to the earlier item. We've got the report, we've read it, we've been to the site. We have a level of appreciation, but we're certainly interested to hear from you as well. So please proceed.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. So obviously we've read the report as well and can see that the council's raised a number of concerns. In our view, there's sort of a few sort of primary issues, and the key one that seems to be coming out of the report relates to the issue of amalgamation or isolation. There's a fair bit of commentary around whether the efforts to acquire the neighbour were reasonable, whether they followed the relevant process. So I just wanted to give the panel some background to that. The owner of the site is a local real estate agent. He's owned the site for 3 or 4 years. He's been trying to acquire that adjoining site for the best part of 2 years. So just by way of background, there were discussions and offers made around sort of June to August 2016, informed by valuations with an effort to come together to do a combined development. They didn't proceed. A DA was subsequently lodged almost sort of 12 to 18 months after that, on the basis that we couldn't actually acquire that site. The council's raised through the assessment some concerns about the age and the date of those valuations and offers. So there was some further discussions and valuations obtained in June of this year. The valuations actually come down. Obviously the market shifted a little bit. The offer made was a little bit below the valuation. I appreciate that's a concern from the council. By way of background to that, there was a meeting with that owner on behalf of our client with a view to try and negotiate some sort of outcome that didn't progress. They've essentially said, look, they're not willing to sell essentially at any price. So we're stuck in a situation where we can't acquire that site. So that's some background. I mean, in terms of process and procedure, we could certainly go through and provide a further written offer, send it by registered post. The outcome would essentially be the same for all intents and purposes. So just wanted to provide some further background on that aspect to it. The other sort of key issues sort of identified is building height as being one of those. You would have seen the site opposite this, which is currently under construction for a similar sort of 4-storey building. Our development's a 4-storey building that pushes through the height limit to the lift overrun fire stairs and part of a roof structure over a barbecue to give some weather protection. So the variation is essentially to that component of the development. You would have seen on the plans and going to site that we're adjacent to an R2 zone, so we've been sort of constrained in that respect as well to providing a 9-metre separation, which we've achieved to the majority of the building. That's curtailed our floor space. We're at sort of 1.5 to 1 versus the controls 2 to 1, so it's not as though we're trying to push up and get more. It's essentially the rooftop area. We could actually take off that roof to the barbecue if there's a concern around the way that that presents to the street, noting it sort of does. If you look at the 3D, it will be slightly visible. We could take it off, but we think it makes sense to retain it in that location. There was a concern about building separation from that rooftop common area to the R2 zone. I think it's 10.9 metres, which is marginally less than the ADG. You would have seen on the plans, there's some series of planter boxes provided on that edge to deal with some privacy impacts in that regard. There were some other concerns around the ground floor interface and the relationship between the commercial and the residential. The commercial access door from that central lobby space is really intended for employees and staff of that commercial space. The primary access point is off Marylands Road. So we actually think that there's not a real need to further segregate entries, and it would be otherwise segregated by key locks and swipe cards and that sort of thing between the two, so there can't be any interaction or commercial visitors going up further than they should be allowed to in terms of getting to those residential levels. So I suppose in a nutshell today, our position is obviously not in support of the recommendation for refusal. What we'd be requesting of the panel is that they consider deferring the item so that we can actually essentially go through that specific DCP procedure in terms of providing an offer via registered post rather than a hand-delivered offer that was made. Our client's office is 800 metres from that property, so we're happy to provide evidence, more evidence, that we've done everything we can to possibly acquire that site. There's obviously some other design matters that are raised. We think there are readily available solutions to those design matters that we could quite quickly jump on and amend. And if the panel had any further concerns, we could also jump on those. But willing to answer any questions that the panel may have. As I say, we'd request that the matter be deferred until the next meeting or the meeting after that, so that we could essentially address all those concerns of the council, given we've been going through this process for quite some time now.
Wood, does the panel have any questions of Mr. Wood?
Yes, I do have one question. I mean, I think one of the issues that perhaps is not identified in the report that we have in terms of concerns with the proposition that's before us at the moment is the extent and location of the driveway, because you've got a 9-metre setback that's meant to be about handling transition to a lower density zone, but rather than providing the opportunity to buffer the neighbouring property with landscaping and an amenity outcome in terms of either private or communal open space that's fully occupied by the driveway ramp. So I think if we were to consider deferring, I certainly would be wishing to see something done to rectify that outcome.
Yeah, sure. Did you have I suppose, a dimension at the moment? I think we've got about a metre, which obviously only allows for a certain size of screen planting. Did you have a thought as to how wide that would need to be? There's obviously another concern about manoeuvrability and things that we've got to consider both aspects to it. But if the panel had an indication of what they thought that transition might be, noting we can't come in off Marylands Road, unfortunately, it's access denied. We could certainly look at that.
We'll give that some consideration.
Sure.
Some of the other design elements that you... Is that regarding, like, say, waste management areas?
Yeah, correct.
That council had problems with?
There was a problem. I think the problem identified was that the bin storage area isn't enclosed. There's an area allocated in the basement. The bins are sitting in the basement. We could certainly build a structure around it, making sure that it obviously doesn't impact on vehicle manoeuvrability to those parking spaces in proximity. So to enclose a garbage storeroom in a basement is not a difficult exercise for us to achieve in that respect.
Okay.
Further from panel members? No. Would the process, just dealing with the amalgamation issue, the process much been established by the Land and Environment Court, reinforced in the council's planning controls, would require evidence, physical evidence of the offer having been made and the response to that. Now, my understanding is that the council hasn't been provided with that information.
Yeah, so I'll touch on that briefly. So there's two parts to it. There was the original series of offers made in sort of June and August 2016. They were sent via registered post. I've got a registered post receipt for that aspect to it. There was 2 valuations done. The offer made in 2016 was 1.7 million. We gave them 14 days to respond. There was no written response. The meeting that our client had with the owner and their legal rep was, we're not willing to sell it. We're not going to provide you with anything in writing to that effect. So on the basis that that offer expired, we essentially proceeded with the scheme that we had. So that was in 2016. Can appreciate the concerns around what's happened in 2018 in that it's a hand-delivered letter, discussions that have occurred. There's nothing in writing from that owner saying, again, we're not interested. We've got have plenty of verbal discussions. I dare say if that is the concern with that process, we can certainly provide a further offer via registered post that essentially says 2 weeks, can you please indicate your intentions to us? Our issue is that they haven't expressed those intentions in writing back to us at all through this 2-year process. And to be honest, it would be better if we got the site, because we're at 1.5 to 1 versus 2 to 1. If we had that site, we'd actually be able to achieve a better density and better yield. So it's not as though it's something that we're not hoping to do. It's the fact that we've been stymied for 2 years in trying to do that.
Good, thank you. I'd have to agree with you, and I think I can speak on behalf of the panel that be a much better outcome. Potentially more, but at least one of the immediate.
Yep.
Part of the difficulty is, I'm sure I'm not telling you anything you might don't already know, is one, the land area, but also it's quite a shallow site.
Yeah, correct. It is.
Which makes it awkward to basement and reasonable separation above as well. It is a particularly challenging site. Raycorn, did you have anything you want to add either about the process regarding the attempted amalgamation and or other design matters? Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's probably 2 components to it. Firstly, the application was lodged toward the end of last year, so it has been ongoing for some time. There has been a dialogue with council and the applicant, and the result of that is what is before the panel today. Now, whilst there's sort of 2 elements to this, one is around process, which in this instance there is a technical non-compliance with that process, which Mr. Wood has conceded. But it's more so the design response. So whilst that process technical matter may be resolved, council is of a view that the actual design response for the limited site is still not appropriate. And that's particularly evident as it relates to the basement and the inability of vehicles to manoeuvre through that. The issue raised again by Mr. Wood in terms of the garbage space is probably not just a matter of including a wall. It's a little bit broader than that. It relates to the operations of that, the gradients of the basement, to be able to actually get a tug and move the facility, rather the garbage through the site. There are some other amenity considerations as well in terms of the size and design of the units. So, and again, in terms of the upper level not compliant with the setback by virtue of its interface with the R2, that is again a technical variation, but council have looked at this in its entirety as a package. So therefore all of those variations have been included in the report. So as a package, we think that the application shouldn't be supported both on technical grounds in terms of process, but also in terms of the design outcome. So we'd probably request that the panel make a decision on the application.
Yes. All right. Thank you. I understand the point that both Mr Acorn and you, Mr Wood, have made, is that you might comply with the, technically with the process regarding the attempt to acquire the site next door, but end up in the same place, which is,
Yeah.
there
correct.
are some, as far as the council's concerned, there are design deficiencies nonetheless.
Yeah, so correct. So I guess if the panel is in agreement with those design deficiencies, then whether or not we go through another process in
Yeah.
evaluations and offers is a bit of a redundant
Yeah.
one. But I guess if we could get some clarity on the panel's view on those specific issues, as I said, there's some minor ones. It sounds as though the panel has some concerns about some more fundamental ones about landscaping and interface and that sort of stuff. If we can get a clear direction on that,
Yeah.
it'll be helpful moving forward, because I don't think we're going to get a bigger site, unfortunately. So I think at some point we'll be back
Yes.
with a further revised scheme. But yeah, keen to understand precisely
Yeah.
what the key issues are, so we can try and resolve those through the process.
Yeah, so look, also I appreciate that the application as proposed doesn't achieve the floor space potential that the site might otherwise notionally be able to achieve, which is in
Yep.
part recognition of the constraints, but it's it's a constrained site just because of its size and
Yeah, I agree.
and depth and relationship to the adjoining property. All right, but nonetheless, we'll certainly take into consideration your request for deferral and during the adjournment. All right, if there's no further speakers on either of the items, we will adjourn. I can't really give you an indication of how long we may be adjourned for. I mean, there are only the two items, but we do have a little to consider in both of those items. Look, I'd hope that we might be in the order of 30 to 40 minutes, but I can't promise that. So you're welcome to stay when we return. Otherwise, our decision will be decisions will be posted on the council's website. And thank you. I'm saying the right thing. Thank you. So we'll adjourn now. Thank you. Which means the gallery retreats. We stay here. Thank you. And we'll be back as soon as possible. Recording? Yep, thank you. Welcome back and thank you for your patience. We'll now declare the meeting open again. The panel has come to decisions in relation to both of the matters. In relation to item 1 at 18 Todd Street, Marylands West, the decision of the panel is to approve the application with the inclusion of deferred commencement conditions 5 to 10, pretty much as discussed during the open session of the meeting. No, that opportunity's expired. Sorry. The reasons for I won't read all of those verbatim, but the reasons for the decision are again on the screen, which I will run through. 1, the development subject to the recommended conditions together with the additional conditions imposed by the panel will have an acceptable amenity impacts on adjoining properties. 2, the proposal will provide an acceptable form of development within the medium density housing in the location. 3, the inclusion of the angled windows is considered to offer a better amenity to the new units whilst still preserving the privacy of the adjacent existing development. 4, the removal of the obscure glazing to the bedroom windows on the western side provides improved amenity to the new units, given separation distance between the proposal and the lower townhouses is sufficient to provide reasonable privacy. 5, the deletion of the open basement design along the eastern boundary ensures there are not acoustic impacts to the adjacent existing development and provides for the opportunity for landscaping for the side setback. There's more. 6, the relocation of the OSD tank enables the rear portion of the site to be used as high quality private open space associated with the ground floor units without potential safety issues. 7, the relocation of the fire egress stairs out of the front setback allows greater landscaping opportunities and improves safety. And 8, the change of painted render to colour pigmented render reduces long-term maintenance. They will be the additional deferred commencement conditions that form part of the approval. Thank the applicant representatives for your assistance with this matter. That's the determination of the panel in relation to this item. Thank you. In relation to item 2 at 327 Marylands Road, Marylands, the decision of the panel is to refuse the application. The reasons for refusal as resolved by the panel provide some minor refinements and amendments to the recommended reasons provided by council officers in order to remove repetition and provide greater clarity regarding the design deficiencies of the development. In that respect, with regard to the recommended reasons, the panel has resolved to remove reasons 1.1.1, 1.1.3 and 1.1.7 and amend 1.1.4 and 1.1.6. Other than that, the reasons for refusal as recommended are the reasons adopted by the panel and as amended, as I said. Further we need to cover off? No. On that basis, I'll close the meeting. And for the assistance provided by the council officers and my fellow panel members. Declare the meeting closed. Thank you.